It was a Tuesday morning when I first met Oliver. Rain drummed against the windows of the social services office, creating a melancholy soundtrack to match the occasion. I sat on a plastic chair, fingers drumming nervously against my knees, as the door opened. "Mr. Mitchell?" The social worker's voice was gentle. "This is Oliver." The boy who shuffled in couldn't have been more than 6 years old. His shoulders hunched forward as if carrying an invisible weight. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his small hand clutched a worn backpack strap like a lifeline. "Hi, Oliver," I said, trying to sound casual despite the tremor in my voice. "I'm James." His eyes, hazel like autumn leaves, assessed me with a wariness no child should possess. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just nodded once, short and guarded. I hadn't planned on becoming anyone's father. My life as a high school English teacher in the quiet suburbs of Westbrook had been predictable, even mundane. But when my sister Sarah and her husband died in that car accident 3 months ago, leaving behind their only child, everything changed. "He hasn't spoken much since the accident," the social worker whispered, as Oliver examined a framed painting on the wall. "The trauma therapist says it might take time." I nodded, my throat tight. I barely knew this child, had only met him twice before at holiday gatherings. Sarah had moved across the country years ago, our relationship reduced to occasional phone calls and Christmas cards. Now I was all Oliver had left. The paperwork took an hour. Oliver sat silently, drawing circles on a notepad. When we finally left, the rain had stopped, though dark clouds still hung overhead. A perfect metaphor for our situation. The drive home was silent. In my rearview mirror, I watched Oliver stare out the window, his reflection fractured by raindrops on the glass. When we arrived at my modest 2-bedroom house, he followed me inside without a word. "Your room is upstairs," I said, carrying his small suitcase. "I painted it blue. The social worker mentioned it's your favorite color." For the first time, a flicker of interest crossed his face. The bedroom was simple. Blue walls, a twin bed with a navy comforter, a desk, and a bookshelf I'd hurriedly filled with age-appropriate books. "The bathroom's across the hall. I put some dinosaur towels in there for you." I was rambling now, nervous energy spilling out. "Are you hungry? I could make sandwiches." Oliver placed his backpack carefully on the bed and unzipped it. From inside, he withdrew a framed photograph, my sister and her husband smiling with Oliver between them. He placed it on the nightstand and stared at it. "I miss them too," I said softly. His small shoulders began to shake. I hesitated, then sat beside him on the bed. When I placed my arm around him, he didn't pull away. Instead, he turned and buried his face against my chest, his tears soaking through my shirt. "It's okay," I whispered, though we both knew it wasn't. "We'll figure this out together." That night, after tucking him into bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee and a mountain of doubt. I didn't know how to be a father. I'd always been focused on my career, my independence. I'd never even had a relationship last longer than a year. Now I was responsible for this broken little boy. Yet somehow, in that moment when he'd cried against my chest, something shifted inside me. I might not know how to be a father, but I knew how to try. I might not know how to be a father, but I knew how to try. And try I did, through those first difficult months that slowly bled into years. Oliver's trauma therapist had been right. It took time. 6 weeks before he spoke his first word to me. Pancakes, when I asked what he wanted for breakfast. 3 months before I heard his laugh, a startled sound that escaped when my attempt at building a model airplane ended with glue all over my hands and nose. 6 months before he stopped having nightmares every night. But gradually, life found a new rhythm. I learned to pack lunches with notes tucked inside, to coach Little League despite knowing nothing about baseball, to navigate the bewildering world of parent-teacher conferences from the other side of the desk. Oliver learned to trust again, to make friends at his new school, to call my house home. By his 10th birthday, 4 years after he'd come to live with me, something remarkable had happened. We had become a family. Not in the way either of us had planned, but real nonetheless. When he blew out the candles on his birthday cake, surrounded by friends from school and teammates from his baseball league, the shadows in his eyes had largely disappeared. "Make a wish," I'd said, and he'd given me that crooked smile that always made my heart swell. Later that night, as I tucked him in, a ritual he claimed to be too old for but still secretly enjoyed, he asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Do you think my dad would be mad that I call you Dad sometimes?" I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. We'd always been honest about his parents. Their photos were displayed prominently around our house, and we talked about them often. "No, buddy, I think he'd be grateful that you have someone who loves you, and I know he'd be incredibly proud of the person you're becoming." Oliver nodded, seemingly satisfied. "I think so too." Life continued its forward march. I dated occasionally, but never seriously. My focus remained on Oliver. I watched him grow from a quiet, traumatized child into a confident preteen who excelled at science and baseball. My colleagues often remarked on how naturally I'd taken to fatherhood, not seeing the countless nights I'd spent second-guessing every decision, researching parenting techniques until dawn, or simply watching him sleep, terrified of failing him. Then came that unseasonably warm spring day when Oliver was 12. I was grading papers on the back deck while he practiced pitching against the backstop I'd installed for his last birthday. The doorbell rang, unexpected and somehow ominous. "I'll get it," I called, making my way through the house. The man standing on my porch was tall and broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair and a deep tan that spoke of outdoor work. But it was his eyes that stopped me cold. Hazel, exactly like Oliver's. "Can I help you?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew the answer. "My name is Christopher Walsh," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I've been looking for my son for a very long time." The world tilted beneath my feet. Christopher Walsh had been declared dead alongside my sister in the accident. His body had never been recovered from the river, but after months of searching, authorities had concluded he couldn't have survived. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I was thrown clear of the car," he said. "Washed downstream. Had severe head trauma, amnesia. Spent 2 years in a rehabilitation center before my memories started returning." His eyes moved past me, searching the house. "Please, is Oliver here?" As if summoned by his name, I heard the back door slam and Oliver's footsteps approaching. "Dad, did you see that curveball? I think I finally..." He stopped dead in the hallway, his baseball glove dropping from suddenly limp fingers. His eyes, so like the stranger's, widened in shock and confusion. "Oliver," Christopher breathed, and in that moment, I felt my carefully constructed world begin to crumble. Time seemed to freeze. Oliver stood motionless, his face draining of color. His eyes darted between Christopher and me. Confusion etched across his features. That's not possible," Oliver whispered. "You died. With Mom." Christopher took a tentative step forward, and I instinctively moved to place myself between them, a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed by either. "I survived, son," Christopher said, "but I was hurt badly. Lost my memory. It's taken me years to find my way back to you." The following days were a blur of legal consultations, phone calls with social services, and hushed conversations after Oliver went to bed. Christopher had documentation, medical records from the rehabilitation center, brain scans showing trauma consistent with his story, DNA test results confirming his identity. His resurrection was extraordinary but undeniably real. For Oliver, it was too much to process. He retreated into himself, reminiscent of the silent boy who had first entered my home 6 years earlier. At night, I heard him crying through the wall that separated our bedrooms. Christopher stayed at a nearby hotel, visiting daily. He was patient, respectful of boundaries. He brought photo albums I'd never seen, shared stories of Oliver's early childhood that I'd never heard. I couldn't hate him, though part of me desperately wanted to. He was a good man, who had suffered an unimaginable tragedy, only to wake up and discover his life had continued without him. 2 weeks after Christopher's appearance, Oliver and I sat on the swings in our backyard, gently rocking back and forth in the twilight. "What happens now?" Oliver asked, his voice small. I stared at my feet, digging patterns in the dirt. The truth was, I had no legal claim to him. Christopher had never been declared an unfit parent, had never surrendered his rights. Biology and law were on his side. "Your father wants you to live with him," I said, the words like glass in my throat. "But you're my dad too," Oliver said fiercely. "You're the one who taught me to ride a bike and helped with my science projects and sat with me during thunderstorms." I blinked back tears. "And I'll always be here for you, no matter what. That will never change." "I don't want to choose," he whispered. "It's not fair." "No," I agreed. "It's not fair at all." That night, I made the hardest phone call of my life. Christopher answered on the second ring. "He needs stability," I said without preamble. "These last years have been about building trust, creating safety. If you take him away completely, it could undo everything." Silence stretched between us, heavy with implications. "What are you suggesting?" Christopher finally asked. "Shared custody. A transition period. Your house is only 30 minutes from here. He could keep his school, his friends. We could create something new, something that puts Oliver first." Another long pause. "I've missed so much of his life already," Christopher said, his voice thick. "I don't want to miss any more." "I know," I replied. "But this isn't about what either of us want. It's about what Oliver needs." 3 months later, Oliver has 2 bedrooms in 2 different houses. On Wednesdays, when I pick him up from baseball practice, Christopher and I exchange updates about school projects and doctor appointments. We sit together at his games. Awkward at first, but gradually finding common ground in our shared love for this remarkable kid. It's not what I imagined when I first took in that silent, grieving 6-year-old. The future I'd carefully planned. High school graduation in our front yard, teaching him to drive, helping him move into his college dorm, has been reimagined, reshaped to accommodate the miracle of Christopher's return. Some nights, I still sit alone at my kitchen table, wrestling with the ache of partial absence. But then I remember Oliver's words to me last week, as I helped him pack for a fishing trip with Christopher. "You know what I figured out?" he'd said, folding a sweatshirt with careful precision. "Some kids don't even get one good dad. I somehow ended up with 2. I raised him as my son until his real father returned. And now? Now we're raising him together. 2 fathers with different claims, but the same priority. The happiness of the boy who taught both of us the true meaning of family."
Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more interesting content coming soon.